I saw a trail of blue wrestling.
Oh, you did, so you know. I was up here.
Did Cole tell you about his dog?
Yeah, his dog got blue ink on his tail.
Everywhere.
Is that that white dog that just down there?
Yeah, well, it's his fault.
How we've invited each other into our living rooms, our homes, essentially, to get
I tried to get Glenn to come, he was in the middle, like, he was just finishing
we're
class.
all,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
all the same.
That's alright.
We also have our unique, like the chairs
Yeah.
are unique, so that represents our differences.
I wear a watch. I never knew something. Well, I'm just going to stand here. I'm Martha Breckenridge, and I teach art history. Most of you know me. I'm just delighted to be able to introduce to you this group of young women who are artists to-be, are artists now in training, but who are going to talk to us about some of their work, which you'll see around here in the back, as well as the experiences they've already had and what they expect to have as women artists in a world dominated by male artists. So, thanks, girls. I should say, Sky McKeever, Kim Pliskota, Kate Horvath, Hillary Cole.
You just wanted me to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. I'm getting ready to be 23 in a few days. I'm graduating this May. My major is in ceramics, but lately my art is taking me in a different direction, and I'm focusing more on sculpture. The pen and ink drawings laying on the table are mine. I didn't bring any of the sculpture with me because they're kind of big and bulky and they're delicate and they're in the process of being made, and I didn't want to damage them. But the drawings are directly related to what I do in sculpture. They're kind of like concept drawings. They're the before thoughts and the afterthoughts of the wood building process that I do. I'm really interested in surface and texture pattern and how that relates to how we cover or pattern ourselves as human beings with clothing or makeup or things like that, how we relate with other people. And I'm also interested in what it is that I can project my image to other people, how I can change how people perceive me. So that's I guess all there is to say about that. I don't know.
I'm Kim Pliskota, and my work is on the wall over there, the really colorful, crazy stuff. Basically, what inspires me is color and geometric shapes, and I started out actually in the photography field. That's what I started going to school for many years ago at Southern Illinois University, and I really enjoyed that very much. I took a break from school and had a really great opportunity to run a business for a few years and made a few different moves, and went to school in Texas for a while and switched over to graphic design, partially inspired by some of the things that I had started to do in the business. And I really enjoy graphic design. I found myself analyzing album covers or magazine layouts or newspaper layouts, things like that, and typography. I was very interested in typography, and I knew that graphic design would be a good thing for me to get into because it's all very much based on that. So, so the things that I like to do, these are obviously some paintings / drawings, and one of my self-promotional posters that I did for a project. I also really enjoy origami. I like making things with my hands. I like woodworking and sculpture as well. I'm into a little bit of everything. Also, ceramics is really, drawing me in lately. So my work is very inspired by those things, and I just like to do it all, basically. I have a little bit of art ADD, so, but yes, that's a little bit of background.
I'm Kate Horvath, and I'm a senior studio major, emphasis in printmaking, and mine are the 3 framed prints, and then I have etchings, and then I have one smaller etching on the table and the one watercolor. And my work addresses the complexities of the unknown. So I always, it's just my view that fear arises from the unknown. So when you name the unknown, it becomes less fearful. And when you accept it and accept the situation that you're in, you're able to handle it and analyze it and get through it. But also there's the duality in that is that you experience some sort of anticipation and excitement in the unknown. It's not always fearful. So I just think it's a very interesting emotion and experience to be somewhat clouded in your perception. And I also deal with the conscious, subconscious. So I tried to find some sort of unknown in my life, and I have night terrors. I've had them for my whole life. So it's just a time every 2 weeks or so, I'll just wake up screaming, or I won't even wake up. So my body's reacting to something that my mind is doing, but I'm not in control or even conscious of it until after the fact. So it's a very odd sensation for me, and it's a little bit about control and lack of control and unknown, but actually, and art making for me is also a process of therapy and analysis, and when I can immerse myself in the materials and figure it out, answers out that way, it helps me become less fearful of things that I don't know. So my content is directly related to my process. So and also printmaking is a little bit mysterious, and you get a lot of happy accidents and sad accidents. So that's also directly related to the content. So yeah.
I'm Hillary, and I'm a studio major, and my emphasis is in sculpture. And behind you there's a plaster figure, and then there's also another figure on the table, which is actually a plaster cast of myself with, I used paraffin wax and melted it down, and used food coloring to color it, and then used Kleenexes to create the layers, which is still a work in progress, but I thought you guys might like to see kind of the work in the process versus being finished. That piece on the top of the table basically has to do with a sense of cocooning. I went through a bout of depression, and most people who do, they start to cocoon, they go inward, and so it's kind of a struggle between going inward, but being happy and getting out there. So it's an envelopment of yourself because you become self-involved. And I'm also so right now I'm working on figure work, but I'm about to start working in some systems. I'm going to start to build some boxes which will contain childhood things, childhood objects or memories, and I want to work with compartmentalizing, because sometimes when you're so busy you start to compartmentalize your brain, and then you have a disconnect. So then I'll start working in systems and building these boxes and setting them up into a grid system. So.
You keep looking at me. Is there anything you guys want to hear about specifically? Questions you have for us?
What challenges have you faced being women in the arts?
I wouldn't say that I myself have faced any challenges as a woman artist. I think more as a student, I've had more of a challenge in that regard, because the art history books are all dominated by male artists and what is considered to be high art and what is considered to be low art. And in the contemporary sections of the art history books, there are some female artists, but only the ones who became inordinately popular. There aren't really hardly any lesser well-known female artists. And it wasn't until I got to take a special topics female artist class last summer that I got to learn about more female artists. And reading and learning about the Guerrilla Girls was also an experience as well. I think the biggest challenge was learning that in the education system that really is hindering female artists, and that people are not being taught about the female artists who are out there and who have had an impact on the male artists. A lot of times the wives of these really big known artists were artists themselves, and they get ignored or passed over because their husband or their lover was more popular. And so during their time they were condemned as, as useless or non-important, or they were just copying off of their male counterparts. So that's the big challenge for me, is learning how history is still covering up and dismissing women and theirs.
Would you all describe the Guerrilla Girls so that for people that don't know about them, what that
You guys know about them?
I have the book, but I haven't read it. I just haven't gotten.
I read the books last summer, but I don't know about them.
Okay. The Guerrilla Girls are a group of anonymous female artists who fight against this institutional repression of women. And they do guerrilla type of advertising over these things, and they really like to target museums. And there's one of their posters when they got popular was about I think it's the Met in New York, that they were talking about how many nude female paintings there were in the Met, and I think it was a huge percentage of all the figure paintings in the Met were nude women. I think it was somewhere in the high 90s, but the amount of female artists represented within the Met was under 10%. And so they said at the top or at the bottom of the poster, do you have to be naked as a woman in order to even get into the Met? And that was what they're doing as a group, is they're raising awareness of the discrimination of female artists. And they go all around the world. The last place I heard that they were in was Ireland, and they were trying to support female artists in Ireland. I know they've been in England and obviously here in the U.S. And they all wear gorilla masks, so you don't know who they are. They've kind of fallen off because it's not, people know now, and it's starting to change in the system, I think. And that's what they wanted ultimately, is for change to occur. And so, but they've kind of lost momentum. So, but I think they're really great, and the whole reason I got fired up about women in the arts is because of their the Guerrilla Girls book of art history, and they talk about the women instead of the men, which I thought was really interesting. So,
Anybody else that can comment about experiences as women?
Yeah, I can actually. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Actually coming to college, well, most of my role models growing up were women, aside from my dad and grandpa. I have my 3 independent, career-driven aunts, my mother, my sister. So coming to college, it was actually the opposite. I was like, oh, I'm going to have to figure out how to connect with male superiors now, because I'm used to interacting with female superiors and feeding off of their energy and everything. But I've also been lucky to have people like Martha, and I don't know Laura Cookie as well, but it's just nice to see a studio artist, a female who has a family and a career and everything. But it was just, it was interesting. I think it was to my benefit to have the mix of male role models and female role models in my life. So I just thought it was interesting coming to college, changing that dynamic with how you interact, because my soccer coaches would mainly be male, but that's a different type of professionalism that you talk to and interact with. So it was different because just the way you interact with males and females is a lot different, especially when you get so personal with your artwork. But then you have to realize that, I mean, the reason that all of those female nudes are in the Met, and why the majority of the artwork in the Met are male, is because the consumers are usually rich white men. So what are they going to want to buy? You know, it's involved with the market too, and they're going to, usually when you buy artwork, you want to make friends with the artist, and so, you know, it's a larger dynamic that I think we need to break through. So it's just starting, and I think the Guerrilla Girls did a lot to help that, but it's also going to take a lot of personal work on, you know, just the artist level, making that personal connection with the clients and everything like that. So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
One thing, when Sky discussed the amount of nudes in the Met, one thing people talk about a lot is the idea of the male gaze, where men are the ones who objectify women into art. And I think a lot of the feminist and like post-feminist movement has to do with women taking back that ability to pose themselves or women as they want to without the male perspective. So, for example, in my piece that's, you know, enveloped and covered, I was able to pose myself through my gaze and how I wanted the viewer to perceive it, versus having a male perspective on how it should be created or how it should be perceived. So, and I think, like, I know for me, I've had a lot of influence with my mother. She's very career-oriented. She works in a male-dominated workforce. She runs hospitals, and, you know, she has taught me, whatever you're in, it's a business. And even though I put my emotions into my art, it has to be a business at some point, because when you work with your male counterparts, you can be perceived as weak if you're showing too much emotion, or you cry or you get upset in a meeting. So understanding, like, having the ability to, like, work through the business side of it, like, I think is important also.
I agree with that too. And just like you guys, my mom was a huge influence on me. She was actually born and raised in South America, in Peru. And she came from a place that, you know, they didn't have electricity or running water, and she didn't have windows or doors on her house. And she had to basically, like, you know, struggle to survive in a way, finding food. You know, there weren't a lot of resources available to her and her family. So I think just hearing her stories really has influenced me and made me appreciate what I have and just kind of go full force with everything I can. I think that's why I love doing everything, you know. I'm super excited just to have the opportunity to be able to work with ceramics and painting and printmaking and photography and learn all this stuff about art history, and it's just been great. And her coming to the United States and kind of jumping in full force into a big city and not really knowing a lot of English, but just being, you know, just so strong and confident, and, you know, working through, like, a male, at the time, like a male dominant workforce. It was just a really, really huge thing for me to hear that. And then later on in life, I think that's what inspired me and helped me in running a business with the help of my husband, John, who's sitting right there. Just running a business and having the confidence to do so, and just expanding and working with people and getting to know people and creating relationships, and, you know, just working with the community and all that. So it's been really great.
Well, I didn't really talk about where I'm influenced or who I'm influenced by. I come from a long line of dominant women In my family, it's been kind of a tradition, starting with my great-grandmother, who is one of my favoriteest people on this planet. She passed away in high school. Started with her. She was not the typical woman. She played sports into her 70s, and she had to finally quit playing softball because she tore her knee and couldn't run anymore. But she was a tomboy, and her daughter, my grandmother, was very bullheaded, and she was more into arts and girly stuff, whereas my grandmother was all about fishing, and she liked to hunt and, you know, play basketball and softball, and she thought if the men could do it, she could do it too. But my great-grandmother lost her husband. He was chief of police in Sugar Creek, and he died on the job. And so that kind of started this trend of women in my family doing things, raising the children on their own without a man around. My grandmother got divorced, and she started doing her own thing and never remarried, never got involved with anyone ever again. My great-uncle, his wife, Aunt Leora, she runs the house. He is just kind of like a bystander, and it makes me laugh because, you know, he's the oldest, and everybody thought that, you know, he was such a big deal, and it turns out that Aunt Leora just kind of put him in his place, and she just runs things, and, you know, he lets her do what she wants because that's the kind of person she is, that no one's going to tell her what she can or can't do. And my mother is the same way. I think a lot of my interest in my own personal identity and how changeable that is comes from the fact that I never met my father. I know who he is, I've seen photos of him, but I've never spoken to him in person. He was never interested in being a part of my life. And so there's this whole side of my genetic makeup and my family history that I only know bits and pieces of what she managed to learn before I was born. And I think my art comes from the fact that I feel that loss. You know, a lot of children with mothers and fathers get to learn everything that comes to that family history, you know, the personality traits or the ethnicity or the family traditions. You know, I don't know what those things are. I know that my father is a good deal part Native American, but I don't know what tribe he came from or what tribes. I apparently have aunts. I don't know who they are. I have at least one half-brother, and I've never met him. And so this need to make wigs and to explore my own identity comes from that fear, that loss, that unknown of who I am, but also the freedom of that changeability, that if any point in time I decided I could completely change how people see me and what they see, and how easy that is to do with makeup and a different hairstyle and different clothes, and just behaving differently. The art making comes from all of the women in my family. They're all artistically inclined, even if they don't think they are. The two biggest influences are my great-grandmother and my grandmother. My great-grandma Jo, the tomboy, taught me all about sewing and embroidery, and that's one of those things that I've never given up, that I really love. And my grandmother taught me all about crochet, and I haven't given that up. And it's something that I love, and those things I use in wig building today, and in the drawings, they're clear influences from those quote-unquote craft processes, if you want to call them craft. But to me, it's the women in my life that have been the most important, because the men haven't been there. And I don't know if maybe that colors how I feel about men in the art world. I imagine that it does, probably. I don't think men are bad. I just think that I've seen a lot of men not being there or taking responsibility for decisions, and so maybe that makes me a little bit more upset about how things occur in the art world than the other person who maybe had a really strong male figure in their life and was able to benefit from that kind of influence.
Could each of you think of a female artist whose
was Georgia O'Keeffe, just because I loved the softness and the beauty of the paintings and things that she did, which is, I mean, it's interesting because I do work that's so much different. I mean, it's so much more bold and angular in ways, but I think that's why I have such a strong appreciation for the types of things that she has done because of that, because it's so different and it just takes me into a whole another world, you know. So it gives me a different kind of emotion than I get from the things that I do.
Of course, I love Kiki Smith. She's one of my favorite artists, and I just love that her work hits you in the gut, and it's just so overwhelmingly powerful, and you know the message, and it's clear. It's somewhat disgusting, and it's borderline crazy, and I love it because it's so bold and powerful and interesting, and that she does everything. She does sculpture, printmaking, drawings, everything, and I really like that she's explores all different types of mediums. So her goal is the message versus just the medium, you know. So, but she happens to just use the mediums appropriately. So.
As we don't have exclusively an artist community here in this room, why don't you all describe your work a little bit specifically so people know what you're talking about?
Yeah. You're going to describe Georgia O'Keeffe first before
Well, Georgia O'Keeffe does a lot of paintings and watercolors of they're very kind of pastel, like not, well, some of them aren't, but the ones that I'm thinking of specifically are kind of not as saturated. She incorporates sometimes animal bones or skulls, flowers, but she abstracts them in a way. She does some landscapes and things. She abstracts some of them to where, you know, you don't necessarily see that right away. It's more about the motion and more about, yeah, just the shapes and things like that and the colors.
And Kiki Smith, I'll just describe the grossest one first. She had a sculpture of herself, or just a woman, but it was obviously her, with menstrual fluid spilling out onto the gallery floor, but it wasn't actual fluid. There were small, cherished, precious little beads and glass, so it was very beautiful. So it's just interesting taking the bodily fluids and making them into treasured objects. And so I just like that she makes gross things beautiful. And, well, in my opinion, a lot of people would say it's too far. But she was heavily involved in the culture wars of the 80s, 90s, more 90s. And so, and she also does prints. She does everything, prints, photographs. She does a lot of fantasy type narrative. So she'll have wildlife, like birds. She has a lot of birds, wolves, deers, and different transitions. So the human-animal interaction, but it's very much into narrative. And she has like a little Red Riding Hood type figure that, but instead of the wolf, you know, the face is hairy. So it's like the child has become the wolf, and it has the cape over it. So it's just, I like the narration in it. So, and what I like is that what a lot of people would at first turn their cheek to, if you take a, turn the other cheek to, you take a closer look and you actually analyze and study it, you'll get a lot out of it. So it may just give you, your initial reaction may be disgusting, but then that adds that complexity. And so that's what I really appreciate about Kiki Smith, is that not everyone can appreciate her if they don't try, you know. So I think that if you look her up, you'll be interested. I'll say interested. Maybe not like, but you'll be interested.
and she came over from France to America, and it was about the time, a little after the French Revolution, so she's focused on pieces that have to do with the guillotine. And she also had some family issues, so she had some emotional abuse and possibly some physical abuse with her father. So she actually makes fun of him. Like, she'll make these huge installations, or she used to. She recently passed away, but you know, she'll make these installations and she'll poke fun at him, and she'll make phallic pieces to say, you know, men, you know, he can't control my life anymore, or, you know, I am an artist and I can do this and it's important to me. She focused on, she even did a set of drawings of, they're called Femme House. It's a body of a nude woman, but a house usually on top of the head, showing the constrictions or the conformity of women back in the 50s and 60s, and their struggle to be tied to the house and the home, stuck working in the home. So I like a lot of her work. She claimed not to be a feminist, but there are definite feminist undertones, so I really think she's important.
My favorite female artist isn't well known, and she's contemporary. I discovered her 5 years ago while I was looking for koi fish tattoos on Google. Her name is Johanna Ost, and she lives in Sweden. She's currently going to university for a history degree. She has no formal training as an artist. She just took an art class in high school and fell in love and never stopped. She kind of has a comic book type of style, but she's really influenced because of the part of Europe that she lives in by Rococo, which is a French. It started out as a French architectural style and became an art style. It didn't last very long because of the French Revolution, in which the monarchy got thrown over first to start becoming a republic and a democratic society. She does watercolors, and she does also pen and ink drawings. A lot of them are they have to do with the female nude, and you know, a lot of them are historically themed. She's recently got into 1950s carnival type of idea or drawings. She's really interested in the weird and bizarre, but her style makes her subjects are morbid and they're creepy, like zombies, two zombies who are in love and they're eating one another. Like, it's an ugly thought, and it should be an ugly image, but the way she treats them, she's so sensitive, and her colors and the way she uses watercolor is so sweet, and it has that delicate Rococo feel. And I think that's that contrast between the subject matter and her visual representation is what I'm so attracted to in her work. And I love it that she's out there making a living off of her artwork and going to college at the same time, and she's able to do all of this great work and go to school and, you know, overcome the obstacles of being a student and not being able to work. And I guess that's part of the reason why I enjoy her so much. So.
I have a question for you. Considering that majority of your faculty in the studio area is male, do you find critiques or influences, do you find male, masculine influences coming through in the works, or?
Not particularly, but I mean, naturally that's gonna happen. It's gonna be a different dynamic. I've not had too many female critiques, so I can't say. Maybe with the female professor critiques, so you might maybe someone in ceramics, because Laura is the only one I've never taken a class with her. So I've always had male art role models. So
I don't feel that the male faculty try and make you more masculine in your work. I don't feel that way at all. I think that they just stand back and they just give you a critique. They tell you where you're kind of weak and where you're strong, where you're going wrong, or where you're going right. But I don't feel like any of the critiques I've ever gotten from any of the male faculty are colored like that. I don't think that they're trying to make me masculine or make my work masculine at all. And I think that that's just because, I don't think any of the faculty here are concerned about male or female and whether male is better than female or female better than male. So.
What about the opposite? What about, do they push you more because you're in a historically male-dominated humanity?
I think with sculpture, I get pushed a little bit more because once I really do get out into the real world, it will be mostly males, because right now there are only females in my sculpture class, but that's very atypical to the real world. But I think it's a push in a good way, because it's getting me prepared for when I do have to eventually get out there and be in a sphere like that. I think my sculptor professor, he provides a bounty of information on, in the art world, out of the art world here. He brings up women artists and male artists, in sculpture. So I really think he does a really good job at diversifying everything, but then at the same time preparing me for the reality of the outside. So.
Yeah, and there's the opposite too. I don't feel like anything's really been sugar-coated either. So they haven't really gone soft on us either. Which is good. Which at the time it's like, man, this hurts. But everyone feels that way sometime during your critique. But then you only realize maybe 1 or 2 years down the road and see where it's taken you and how it's helped you to not have things sugar-coated. So, and I haven't really seen, I've had classes, when I started out, it was actually the opposite. I was in a class full of guys. And now it's all girls. And it's a lot different. But they have been treating me the exact same. So, and the guys the same way too. So, I haven't noticed really any difference. If I did, I would call them out, so.
Can anybody think of specifics of artists about maybe the ones about whom you spoke, or artists whom you knew, who you know now, who are females, in whose cases you could describe specific things they're dealing with as well?
Yeah, sure.
Well, Louise Bourgeois, she came over from France after the French Revolution, and, she left her family and she came over to New York to work, and she had to deal with, well, first of all, her family, like her father had a mistress, and he was very emotionally abusive, said horrible things to her. So for her, that was really hard to get past, because she had a male-dominated influence throughout the development of her childhood. And I think that was really crucial to some of her artwork. I think the other thing, too, is she was involved, she was around during the 50s and the 60s, and she saw the housewives, sitting in their houses and not allowed to go work, or not allowed to, pursue other interests besides keeping a house. And I think that was definitely an influence for her, because she felt she couldn't necessarily do that. She didn't feel like that was her path, that she could be at home and be happy. And so she decided she wouldn't do that. She'd be an artist. And she still was married, but she also had her art, and she didn't just focus on the house and her family. she had a place for herself to focus on herself. So
Yeah, and I think the best way to display feminism is to just be yourself, to be a woman, and to be independent. I never want to like exclude male opinions. You know, it should be just follow the path that you think you should go and take advice from whoever gets it, or don't take advice from wherever you get it. And you'll see where you end up if you follow your intuition. I mean, that's exactly what happened with my mom. She was going to be a high school teacher and was engaged and was going to marry this guy, and then the guy got another girl pregnant. And then she met another guy and said, my dad, and said, okay, well, she did student teaching and hated high school. And Dad said, well, go back to school. She said, okay. And then she eventually got her PhD and is now the head of the Department of Pathology at KU Med Center. So, you know, it wasn't a means of, I'm going to stick it to every man I see. It's, I'm just going to do what choices I want to make. I'm going to make the choices I want to make to have a happy, successful life. So if you want to be a housewife or have children, or, you know, it's fine. It's the best way to empower females is to have them have a choice, you know. That's like Sky and I were talking, we don't really call ourselves feminists. We just say, we just want it equal. I mean, which it is. I think it is. It's just a matter of doing it or not thinking that there's a bunch of obstacles. Because I never really thought about it until I came to college, and not in a bad way. I just realized there's a lot more guys around here than girls. I'm not used to this. You know, it's just different. So to not think of it as obstacles, to just think of people as people versus just men and women, and he's suppressing me because he's a man. Maybe he's just suppressing you because he's not a very nice man. You know, things like that. Because, you know, that's the way I take it. So, yeah. So, any other questions?
This is the final question. It's about 1:45. I know some people have class at 1.
1:45? Okay.
1:45.
Oh, till 1. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, time went by.
So one final question for artists. Is there a question you thought you would be asked that you weren't?
I kind of have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because something that I think about, like, as an artist, one of the processes after, you know, you get your undergraduate is going to graduate school, and it's a really long time, like a 2 to 3 year program. And something that everybody starts to think about is developing families. I know that the difference between how a man views it and a woman views it is probably slightly different. So what are your views about that? Like, does that come along in being an artist, or do you feel like that's something you always think about, or do you feel like it'll just come whenever it comes?
Sure. I for one, want to do a lot of traveling and adventure, and I know I couldn't have that without with carrying a child around. So for me, I always think about family and wanting a family. I mean, I'm going to have a family and husband and everything like that, but who's to say it has to happen now? I mean, a lot of my sister just got married. She's older than me, but my sister just got married, my friends are engaged, they're all getting married, so I'm seeing this all happen around me, and I'm thinking, dude, what's wrong with me? Why am I not put together enough for this? What's going on? And, but I think that it just goes along what you want to do with your career. Again, you know, it's all about whatever choice you want to make, because if I wasn't into art, I'd probably want to start a family right away and do all that. That's not good or bad. It's just what I want to do right now would be very, very, very difficult to continue at the pace that I'm going and have a child, because I would want to adequately raise the child too. And I think you do, as a woman, have a greater role, investment in it. It's a physical investment in having the child. So I'm not sure if I answered the question, but yeah, I think about that a lot because it's a natural instinct, but you just have to time it right, I think.
I've been dating my boyfriend for over 4 years now, and when I graduate in May, I'll be moving out to Montana where he's going to grad school because he and I have been long distance the whole time we've been together. We've never been, except for one semester of school, we've never been in the same zip code longer than like 2 weeks at a time. And, you know, other than always doing art, the other thing I always wanted to do was be a mom. And I've always loved little kids. Even when I was younger, I liked younger kids than me. And I have family female health problems that have been consistent through the family line. And I'm kind of faced with the problem is I have to have them before 30 because of female issues. I need to have them soon or I won't be able to have them at all. Because it's been very typical with my female family members to have a full hysterectomy by 30. And so for me, the choice is coming up very quickly about, you know, how soon do I want to start having children, because I want them badly. But I also know, because I've watched, you know, my family members have kids and watched how much that changes their life, I have the expectation that when I start to have children, my art making will have to drop off because children are more important than the things you want sometimes. And I'm okay with that because I know that is going to be important, and that's something that matters because it's someone else's life at that point. It's not mine anymore. And so I think the way a lot of women go wrong when it comes to art and having a family is that they think that having a baby won't change things that much, and that, you know, when you have a kid, you'll still have time for a 12-hour studio shift, and you'll still have time to be in the studio for 6 hours every day, and that's just not possible because babies are a handful, as I've seen, and they require your constant attention to make sure they don't burn their hands off or, you know, eat things they shouldn't, or, you know, get lost, or, you know. So I'm kind of looking at, you know, making the decision about how much my art is going to drop off because I want children, and that's a sacrifice I'm personally willing to make. And I know that there are other people who aren't ready to make that choice, and I think that's fine too. I think that there's a lot of, in the Midwest anyway, a lot of pressure and expectation that as soon as you're done with school, you go and get married and start producing children, and then that's your life and your purpose. And I think that that's sad because that's not for everybody. So
I agree. I've been recently put under a lot of pressure, not from my husband, although he does want a baseball team of children, but from my parents and my sister, which is strange because they always said, oh, you know, finish school, go to school, it's really important and everything, but for some reason now they're like, no, have babies, have a bunch of babies, because, you know, we want more kids in the family. But I've been married for 10 years, and I've been really lucky because I think John and I are both on the same page that, you know, he's really supportive of my education, my future, and what I want to do with my art. And although I would like to have children at some point or adopt children or something, right now I think we're both really satisfied with having our, you know, our nephews and our niece and everything to spoil and to see as much as we can. And we're both just pretty independent and doing our own thing and doing research and going to school and embarking on new adventures and things. And so right now I think it's something that we've kind of put on hold, and it's a mutual understanding. But I have kind of felt the pressure from even friends and things that are, you know, they've been married for a while and they're having a bunch of kids now, and my sister has 2 kids and she wants me to catch up, and my parents won't visit us until we have kids, so you know, that kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, it's something we've kind of, you know, we realized that we have a lot of things to experience still, and we're both so much into our careers / education, you know, that we just want to focus on that, and I don't know, we'll just see what happens. So, but yeah, thank you, John, for your support. You'll have your baseball team someday.
In my perspective, my parents actually got married very late in life. My dad is actually 68. And so my parents felt like their career was more important at the time than settling down and having children. And obviously they were able to do it later in life. And for me, and this is just me personally, I think I would prefer that route. Just because I want to be able to go to grad school, and I want to be able to experience things, and I want the freedom to not have the ties to be, you know, stuck, you know, doing things, stuck in a particular place. I kind of like to be a nomad for a while, you know, and experience life and go all over the world. And my mom says, well, this is your time now to do it, you know. So in my opinion, that's how I feel, but, you know, people take different routes.
Let's give her a big round of applause.
Everybody taking an opportunity to look at the art, maybe you pull the chairs out.
I was kidding.
So you can see before you go.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
These are on wheels. That's much easier, isn't it?
Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Aren't they a delight? We are really among the stars.
Have a good time, kids.
Thank you. Until we have kids.
Stephen, thank you so much for getting this film. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. It is true. That's perfect.
Creative plan, the best way to do it.
I don't think I ever saw this. That one? Oh, yeah. When did you see? It was wonderful.